Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and this is Finster. Hello, Finster. How are you doing? Here with Ask Dave, and we're going to answer a question together. The question is, why are certain composers so polarizing? It's a good one, huh? Yes, absolutely. In the UK, we would say that they are like Marmite, Marmite being a savory spread made from yeast extract, among other things. I know what it is. I have a jar of it actually sitting in my cupboard, which you either love or hate. I am thinking of people like Liszt, Scriabin, Satie, Delius, maybe Wagner or Hindemith too. So that's the question, and it's a very, very good one. Actually, it's another really, really deep one that a lot of us don't bother thinking about. You know, we like things, we don't like things, but why is it that certain composers, Mozart, people adore Mozart, but you don't see people running around going, I hate Mozart, I love Mozart. I mean, not in that way, not in the way that excites such strong opinions and enmity and craziness. Now, I talk about composer cults all the time, but you don't have to have a cult for composers to excite very, very strong opinions among music lovers. And it's an interesting question, but I think from the list I can see that each composer is polarizing in a different way and for different reasons. So we have to sort of take them one at a time. And the easiest one to start with is Wagner, because Wagner is a polarizing figure for reasons having nothing to do with music. Wagner's music is not terribly polarizing, actually. Now it's accepted. It's a standard part of the repertoire. Nobody argues with performances of Wagner operas or Wagner orchestral excerpts. I mean, people may like it or like a little bit more, a little bit less, but the music itself isn't polarizing. Wagner was polarizing. In fact, you have to remember, he was much more famous in his own lifetime as a pamphleteer than as a musician, as someone who wrote articles and things that got people upset, as a political revolutionary, a fugitive. So he had enormous fame in his lifetime that had absolutely nothing to do with the quality or the effect of the music that he wrote. It was only later that people actually finally started to digest the music, because most people had no opportunity to hear it in Wagner's lifetime. You couldn't hear the Ring. The orchestra didn't exist anywhere but at Bayreuth, basically. These were extraordinarily difficult works to do, to perform, and they were given very, very rarely. And the piece that was most popular by Wagner, probably in his own day, was the Tannhäuser Overture. Early Wagner started to penetrate, but later stuff, not so much. And the music, of course, thrilled people who were musicians or who had the opportunity to hear it and fall under its spell. But Wagner himself was the polarizing person. So he's an easy one to deal with. And he still is, because he was just such a horrid human being and an anti-Semite and despicable and all of that. So he's still polarizing for reasons having nothing whatsoever to do with the quality of the music that he actually wrote. And that's Wagner. That's a very, very special case. Delius, let's go backwards a little bit. Delius is another interesting case. There are people who love him passionately. I don't know anybody who could really get up the energy to detest Delius. But Delius is an iconic example of a particular type of a composer who is polarizing because of the music, solely because of the music. Nobody cares who Delius was. I mean, he caught syphilis, he died. I mean, went blind. I mean, nobody's really interested in his life. He didn't do anything particularly provocative other than catch syphilis in his lifetime. And so Delius is a case where a composer has such a strong personality and such a limited personality. Yeah, I happen to love Delius's music. I think it's marvelous, but only when I'm in the mood for it. Why? Because he had a superb command of a limited number of gestures and affects. He was, the tranquility of nature guy. That doesn't mean he didn't write big climaxes. He didn't have scary moments. I mean, I love when everyone screams in Eventier. He wrote beautiful. He didn't write in any traditional forms aside from the concertos. Basically, that's about it. But there aren't any symphonies. There aren't any obviously sonata formy type things. And even his concertos are very unusual in form. Quite a few of them, like the violin concerto, which is just this endless stream of tranquil melody. I mean, he's a special musical voice, and you either like the voice or you don't. I mean, people love it passionately, and some people, like I said, I don't know how much energy it takes to dislike it, but they ignore it. It's just not part of their life. It's not part of their consciousness. And it's very easy to avoid him. I mean, because he's not played all that much, number one. Number two, you just, if your life is without Delius, let's put it this way, you're missing his unique voice, but the degree to which that's a significant thing, it's open to question, isn't it? He's a tributary in the mainstream of music. And most of us can live without tributaries. So, I mean, that's why he tends to be a semi-polarizing, let's just say. And Satie is like Delius. He's another one of those guys who just had this extraordinary personality, an amazing creative persona, but a very, very limited composer in terms of what he expressed and how he expressed it and the way he expressed it. And so I don't know anybody, actually, again, who really hates Satie. I mean, how do you hate a gymnopédie? I mean, it's not possible, is it? You may not be a fan. You don't have to, just as with Delius. But to hate Satie, I don't know. I don't really know. But people can be passionate about him, of course, because of, the way that he expressed his music and, what he wrote and how he did it and all that stuff. And also because he was a figure. Unlike Delius, he was a figure beyond the merely musical. He was part of a movement, an aesthetic movement, and all that stuff. So, that's why Satie tends to excite partisans one way or the other. Scriabin is an interesting case because Scriabin wanted people to look at his music in a supra-musical way. Right? His music wasn't written because he just had this incredible urge to create abstract instrumental forms called sonatas. His music was there because it was supposed to be part of the ultimate transmogrification of spiritual essence into the far beyond, or whatever it was. He was crazy. He was a theosophist, and his music became stranger and stranger the more his religious mania developed. So there seems to be a deep connection between his life and his spiritual beliefs and the music that he wrote, in a way that really is inseparable. You can't really take them apart from each other. In fact, his late piano works are almost incomprehensible away from that sort of spiritual angle in which he framed them. I happen to think his music is delightful and very enjoyable, but the late stuff is a little strange, let's face it. And, we know that after he died from a mosquito bite or whatever that got septicemia, he was working on, this universal transformation of human spiritual something into colors and flavors and textures and all kinds of stuff like that. So, he was the Dubai chocolate of composers. He wasn't satisfied with just being chocolate. He had to be chocolate with pistachio, with crispy bits stuffed into it and all this other stuff. I mean, Scriabin was a composer who asked for that other dimension. And so a lot of the feeling about him has to do with how you feel about that other dimension, whether you can enjoy the music just for itself or whether you buy into the whole, philosophical falderall that came with it. In that respect, he's a little bit like Wagner, too. It's the music as a means to some sort of higher end. I happen to think that music is as high as you can go, so I don't worry about it, but I like Scriabin's music, too. Now, Liszt is a fascinating case. Tovey was famous in saying Liszt is an artist, as a composer whose art for me has a taint. It was tainted, which spoiled much that I would otherwise find fascinating. That's what Tovey said about it, because he found that Liszt's aesthetics were questionable. And the questionable aspect of Liszt's aesthetics was this mixture of religion with cheap, sleazy, virtuoso showmanship. This not sanctimonious, but this sort of constant assertion that he was talking about sacred things and higher values, and he did. He wrote some superb sacred music, some gorgeous masses, which nobody talks about, nobody knows. And the reason nobody talks about and knows them is because it would really require a revaluation of how serious he was about that. See, people didn't take his religious feelings seriously, certainly not in the more famous works that supposedly express it. And so with Liszt, you get the idea that he was a fake. I mean, that's the divide, the polarizing divide. People who treat Liszt seriously, which I think you should do. I think he was entirely serious. And I think his music expresses that. And those who think it was all just flash and smoke and mirrors, and that the religious, the sacred and the profane, the Totentons, the Fausts, the Mephisto stuff in Liszt was all just there to titillate the ladies, and the religious stuff was there to pacify the bourgeois and his audiences. I think Liszt actually is one of the most interesting of all the 19th century composers, just because of the contradictions that his music straddles. And I think for that reason it's endlessly fascinating. I really do. I mean, he had his limitations as a composer. He wasn't a great tunesmith. His orchestration is screechy. His handling of form could be kind of shaky. I mean, he had a terrible sense of timing, just like so many composers of the Romantic period. Oh, hi, honey. She's such a good cat. She really is. But on the whole, it's easy to understand why he's polarizing as well. But for Liszt, the polarization also comes because of the music itself, which to me means it's music of great character and quality. I mean, if the music can really polarize an audience, then you're dealing with something that's special, don't you think? But anyway, that's the bottom line. If you strip away the political, the non-musical, and the sort of distractions that attend the lives of these various composers who could be polarizing personality. By the way, Hindemith was never polarizing. I don't quite know where that came from. But anyway, if you take those factors away, what you're left with is composers who are polarizing are composers who have such a strong point of view that it's going to arouse a powerful reaction by people who have differing points of view. Mahler, which is the composer you didn't mention here, is the one who's really interesting and polarizing, because his view of what a symphony should be, his everything but the kitchen sink, including the kitchen sink, approach to writing a symphony, that it has to embrace the world, that it should be eclectic, that it can borrow or refer to all kinds of different kinds of musics. Popular music, vulgar music, ugly music, sublime music, chorales, religious music, marches, all the stuff that Mahler tossed into his symphonies. That was bound to be polarizing, because people had a very, very clear idea at the end of the 19th century of what the German symphony was supposed to be and what it was not supposed to be. It was a very restricted, limited view of what a symphony could be. And Mahler blew that up. And that was going to cause controversy. And it did. And as a result, his music is very polarizing, and it still is. It still is. It's remarkably polarizing. There are those who, musically speaking, are purists. They like music that does not refer to this sort of eclectic mélange of material in the way Mahler does. And there are those who think that's wonderful. I mean, I had a big discussion with the Finnish composer, Eino Juhani Rautavaara, whose Third Symphony is as beautiful a post-Brucknerian symphony as you'll ever hear. And he detested Mahler. He detested Mahler because of its impurity. And I sort of poked at him because I said, well, yeah, but your Fourth Symphony is a totally serialist work and the other ones are not. And your style is mixed. Everybody's style is mixed. I mean, he didn't have much of an answer for that, but everyone's entitled to their point of view. And it's not wrong to characterize Mahler as a composer whose point of view could be, as expressed in his music, could be extremely polarizing, especially for certain people who are raised in other musical traditions or who find that approach to music making to be off-putting. So that's what it boils down to. And in essence, I think all great composers are polarizing in the sense that they have such strong personalities and points of view that they are always open to the fact that there will be those who disagree. And if they're going to disagree or dislike them, they're going to do so very strongly, if only because the thing that you dislike is so powerful and so convincing. And so your reaction and your resistance is going to be equally powerful and equally emotionally strong and desperate and convincing. So there you have it, my friends. I hope that sort of answers the question. It was a very, very interesting question. I'm curious to get your take on it too. Really a fascinating topic of conversation. So keep on listening, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.